Hey, thank you, Tom. As he mentioned, my name is Jeremy Davis, and for the most part, I've wear a lot of hats. It's one of my favorite things to do with the city of Chattanooga. But for the most part, I am a GIS technician. A little bit about my personal background. I started as a fine arts major and emphasis in drawing and painting, and then I did a little bit of character animation. So if that doesn't start making sense as this presentation goes on, I hope you catch up a little bit. It gets a little bit more exciting. Obviously, we all know about GIS, so I kind of wanted to skip the boring parts. We know how to import things and export data, but the parts that Chattanooga has started doing a little bit more exciting, I've recently realized that when I first started, that a lot of their programming was getting outsourced to different contractors, and I realized that this was something that we could do ourselves. So I started putting the budget together and started doing a little bit more research and found out that we can put together a solution for our own data collection. And we've been doing a lot right now with photogrammetry and a lot of topographic surveying. And most of our stuff, we run into the issue of inspectors going on to dangerous roofs or going into a slope embankment that has collapsed or something that's just a little less opportune to get down. So basically, I just want to show you guys what we've been working on. It's a little bit more exciting than just the normal everyday stuff that we see in GIS. And like I said, the presentation is about drones. That's my presentation. The name is called GIS is drones, or vice versa, drones or GIS. And I'll go ahead and share my screen so you can see a little bit of the stuff I've got that we've been working on here. So first off, we have our Arbor Creek Restoration Project, and it was a project that we basically had to go in and do a quick documentation of an area where the slopes had collapsed into the river. Let's see if I can get this to play back here. There we go. And we basically took out one of the Phantom 4, the DJI Phantom 4s out there, flew it up, and just showed the progress of how the slope had failed and what the city had been doing to restore it. And this was part of an initiative by FEMA to document how slope embankments could be restored. And it currently does not look like this right now. We've taken a break as we've ordered a new drone system that will allow us to get a little bit more higher detail and accuracy for our inspections. So we're waiting almost probably till around the springtime to bring that drone out to refly this, and it should look completely different from this here now. So hopefully by the time I come back next time to speak, you'll be able to see a completely new Arbor Creek area. And from that same data that I recorded there with the just the videos and pictures, I was able to stitch together a 3D rendition of that same area. And if you can see, we've got the river down here. It was actually one of the most fun projects I've had to go. I had to go out into a trail, find little access points on the other side of the river where I could actually fly into and fly out to where the drone actually didn't crash, because that was one of the newer ones and didn't want us to take it down. But yeah, as you see, this all comes from point cloud data and geographic data that we've used and combined through Esri has a program called Drone to Map, and it does the same as another free software called Web ODM, and that's the one that I used for this one because I had to do it on my personal time. But it allows you to stitch together these images to create a tile or a mosaic that you can perform further analysis on. These models are also, you can also use these and export these out to AutoCAD and GIS and QGIS, any other software that you might want to use to do any type of analytics. The most exciting part about this stuff is that we are in the process of adding a thermal camera to our unit. So it's going to be to the point where we can start doing thermal analysis on some of these breakdowns where we start seeing pipes and runoff contamination coming through. Let's see, I've got another one to show you here. This is one of the latest projects that we did. It's a point cloud model over at the Ferry Tavern. And if you've never heard of it, it's one of the oldest standing structures in Chattanooga. and it was the property of an old Cherokee entrepreneur, and he ran a ferry out here in Chattanooga right near the time when the Trail of Tears took place. And it was a ferry point stop that pretty much allowed traders and everyone to come through to have a place to recoup and get a few more supplies, get some rest. But the interesting about this is we took the drone out here and it took us about 2 hours to fly this. And through a combination of about 80 to 95 exterior photos and probably I'd say about 100 photos of the inside of the building, we were able to reconstruct the whole thing. And it gets pretty interesting here. As you can see, the point clouds are not just on the outside. Let's see, you can take this out here and we'll flip back around here. Through the use of 360 degree cameras, we were able to take the camera and stick it in different rooms to get an approximate model of the interior of the building. And as you can see here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rooms with the staircase here. Let's see, and a small little attic crawl space up here. And if with this point cloud model, I had to throw it through a few different softwares to get the once I got the point cloud data together, I threw it into another software to edit and some of the mesh layers so that you can cut off some of the mess and the noise. And once I got that there, I brought it in this software to manipulate it a little bit more. So that's how you see the interior and exterior at different points. Let's see if I can bring this back here. There we go. And now you've got the interior. So this is the way that we were able to combine it. We took this interior shot and combined it from all the images, and we basically stitched that together with the exterior. And this, like I said, it's a historical building that it's getting to the point to where it's starting to fall apart and they have to do a lot more restoration. So through efforts like this, we're allowed to get an approximate image of what things can look like. And this actually was a personal project that I took on for the Historical Society in Chattanooga. So I had to use my personal equipment, my personal 360 camera, my personal drone to do this one. But it just opens my mind to the possibilities of what you can actually do with more expensive equipment. And this is just with a 3D 360 degree camera. It's not a laser finder. It doesn't have anything like that. This is just pure photogrammetry and geographic data. In the future, as we continue to increase our capabilities with UAV technology and increase the understanding of the software and just being able to manipulate these point clouds, the data will become more accurate and more detailed. But as for now, this is where we sit. And technically, like I said, this can all be done for, if I had to put a rough estimate, I'd say the very least you can get away with doing this is with about $900, and you can get this whole thing, and you can survey any type of area you need to, buildings, interior spots, anything like that. It doesn't have to be a crazy solution, but when it comes down to it, if you want higher quality, then that starts adding up. But like I said, at the most between $900 and $1,000, you can get something like this that you can recreate and send off into other people. Let's see. That's the last bit of the models that I have for you. I'll go ahead and stop sharing here, and I will open it up for questions if anybody's got any. I didn't see any pop up in the chat, but if not, I will turn it back over to Tom.
Cool. Yeah. One thing I was noticing as you were going through that is I wondered how do you pick the point of rotation for that? Is that something you have to identify? It seemed like it was moving around as showing the model.
For the specific model, that's where the it's a little bit harder for monkey brains to try to get that 3D orientation in the computer, but once you get it, it's really just random points where you select. And if you look around, I'll share it back here. But let's see. As you see the access here, If you rotate it on that one, it makes it a little bit easier just to get an idea of which way it's rotating. Same with the red here. So if you can think in 3 dimensions, it's almost like playing a video game. If you can think that way, you can move it that way.
So you're moving your mouse along the colored circles.
That's correct. That's just
Oh, okay.
the angle that they give you here. You can still do the blue on the outside as long as you just think about how it's moving.
Okay, cool.
Hey, Jeremy,
Yes.
could you talk a little bit about the other software packages that you mentioned that you did? I don't think you named any of the post-processing software that you talked about, one that to remove noise or something like that.
Sure thing. The original so for instance, if we're going straight from the field, obviously you have your drone and whichever interface you're using out there, an iPad or some type of device. You have to install some type of device or some type of app on there, like there's, let's see, Pix4D or apps like that. You may have heard of something like that that helps you do an automatic mission. And what that does is it sets how many pictures that you need to take whenever you're doing the initial flight. And once you've gotten all those pictures downloaded back onto your system, there's a few different softwares that you can use. Specifically, if you're more familiar with the Esri software, Drone to Map is the one that I'd recommend. All these softwares are very similar, but it's really just like it's the Apple and the Android game, is whoever you're loyal to, whoever you want to ride with. But Drone to Map is the one that Esri produces, and Web ODM is the one that's it's more so and free open source. That's actually what it's called. It's a, let's see, I'm trying to remember who it's developed by. If I'm not mistaken, I can't remember. It's WebODM. I'll see if I can find a link and throw it up in here before it ends. But if you can operate through code and the command prompt, that one is free. But it also you can also do it by the installer and buy that for $50. And it's basically just a donation to support the developers. But like I said, it is free. So if you can operate command, you can honestly take all of your images and dump them straight in there. I can't. So I just went ahead and paid the 50, and it's been super helpful. Like, because why not? Why not give something back to a developer who's trying to do something? But from there, I took that point cloud. That's the one that stitches the point clouds together. So you've got Drone to Map or Web ODM. Both of those work very well together. Pix4D also has another one. There's several programs. It's just a meshing, any type of photogrammetry software. You can find them out there. They're pretty easy. But once you've got your point clouds initiated, you can actually take that and dump that straight into ArcGIS, ArcPro, or ArcMap, or anything like QGIS. That's another one, especially if you want to go straight to GIS data. But if you want to get a little bit more fancy, like I'm doing with most of the photogrammetry and the visual aspects, I dump it into a software called Meshroom. And it pretty much is a 3D modeling software. It's another free open source 3D modeling software that allows you. It's actually one that they use for gaming software. That's where that connection goes back to my background with 3D modeling and fine arts. That's how I found out about that software. And once I was able to dump that into that software, I was able to cut those meshes down a little bit more to where they were a little bit more pretty, cut out the noise and the garbage that you have around the buildings. And then once I did that, there's this other software called Cloud Compare. That's the one that I was showing you guys where I was manipulating it and moving it around. And it's basically a 3D viewer. So I don't know if there's any software that has all of those combined into one. It may be one of those ones that you have to pay for, but obviously, as you've heard me speaking now, free open source is my jam. If there's any way that I can find a way to do it, even if it's 50 programs, I'm gonna find a way to do it in an efficient way.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Jeremy, can you clarify the time that you spent on this particular project again?
That's a good question.
Yeah, please, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes. So for the Browns Ferry Tavern one, I think I would say it took me about, for the interior shots, mostly, and I'm gonna let you into my personality in my head a little bit more here. If you're the type of person who can plan things out conceptually, if you can think in 3D, this stuff will go a lot faster. But as I'm learning it a little bit more, for this project specifically, it took me about 2 hours to set up all my 360 camera, and move it around the room to take a bunch of spots. And as we know in GIS, data is everything. So the more data, the better. But If I was thinking a little bit more clearly, I probably could have reduced that time to just put the cameras in specific spots that would have optimized the imagery. And like I said, that took me about an hour to 2 hours to do. As as what our I'm sorry, for the flight, it took me about, I don't know if the flight took more than about 20 minutes to do the first lap around the house and to come back down, and another 20 minutes just to get another layer, just to add additional, and another exterior one to go around. And then me just running around with my camera and taking still shots just to get some more high definition around the porch and areas that the drone couldn't get that close. So total, I would say about 4 hours to get a really detailed shot. If you just wanted to do a quick scrap recon, just to get some initial imagery, you could go off that original aerial shot from that drone. So I'd say about 20 minutes for the initial flight, and then about another maybe hour and a half to 2 hours for post-processing to get your model.
Hey, Jeremy, I've got another question. Well, I guess maybe it's a multi-part question. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how the city of Chattanooga, I mean, I know these were a couple projects you wanted to highlight, but what other kinds of projects are y'all considering using drones for? And how many drones do y'all have? And I guess when did y'all get started on using drones for this kind of stuff?
That's a wonderful question. We're actually in the process right now of upgrading all of our systems into a more of an industrial standpoint, because I've been going in with my personal stuff. So I've been using that Phantom. It's more of an entry level one. And we got that probably, I'd say about 2 years ago now, I'd say. And it's just been slowly me just getting the experience on my personal time, going back to different sites and reworking things and thinking about it differently, so that when we got ours, this year has been a little bit more of a learning curve, because the system is a little bit different. It's a little bit more advanced. But in regards to the projects that we have upcoming and ones that we're currently working on, most of the ones, I don't know if you guys remember, but it might have been last year or the year before that those tornadoes came through and just destroyed a good chunk of Hamilton County. That was another one that we had to do. FEMA wanted, there was an area where a lot of the trees had been destroyed, and it was difficult for a lot of the surveyors to get back there to manage to do an assessment for the damage for a fence line. And it was a good chunk of the city property that stretched around this. I'd say, I can't even remember how much it was, but that was, ironically, is what they actually had me out there flying, was to figure out exactly how much it was. But to do a volumetric survey of how much trees had been downed, and the area of how much a linear footage, an estimate of the linear footage of how much of the fence line that had been damaged. Another project that we have been doing that we're kicking around right now is a volumetric survey for our wood recycling plant, because there's so much pulp and stuff like that out there. We just are basically doing estimates with a surveyor. And as we know, that's going to take forever to get big piles of wood chips and stuff like that surveyed. So that's another one that we're considering. And then several other smaller projects around the city that things need to get remapped and maps need to be created. For instance, we have one at the wastewater treatment plant where we're creating, we have an older map that they probably made back in the 80s, like from one of the original flights over the city. And we need to re-update that, since there's been a lot of new construction out there. They've expanded the plant more, and more specifically out there on the technical and analytical side at the plant, they want to do a lot more thermal analysis of some of the tanks out there to see if there's a heat loss happening, or if there's some of the pipes where heat's escaping, if there's something like that to where they can increase efficiency. And I know another project, probably the one that's most complicated for me thinking wise, is another thermal analysis where they want to locate the end of a pipe that they can't find because it's out near just pretty much an area that used to be a dump site. So there's a backed up pipe, and what they're projecting, or that what the intention of doing, is pushing hot water into this pipe and just seeing where it drains out, and just flying the drone up there to do a thermal check to see where this potentially is coming out, so we aren't risking guys going out there and just digging all throughout there. But those are our ooh, there is another exciting project. I forgot, this was actually the reason why they really decided to go with this drone project. if you've ever been to Chattanooga, we have the Walnut Street Bridge, and it stretches right across the river. And if you can imagine, that's a nightmare for any inspector. We've got to hire riggers, we've got to hire rock climbing people, we've got to hire boats, and it becomes like almost like it's something that we have to do almost every 2 years just to inspect this thing in detail. And that was one of the pitches that I mentioned before them was, hey, we can do all this stuff with the drone, especially we can do it a lot more frequently, and we can take this data, rerun it. And once we've got it out there one time, we don't have to program this anymore. We just have to hit this button and it'll fly that same inspection route. And we can take the same data and perform all type of analysis, throw all kind of artificial intelligence software through it and models to anticipate where these cracks are and to anticipate where the breaks could occur and where maintenance might need to go further. That's probably one of the more advanced ones that we're working on right now.
Does anybody else have a question? Oh, go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to comment on the bridge inspection project. We have one of our board members works for a private company that uses drones for projects like that. But I guess I just imagine that a lot of local governments contract out that kind of inspection work because it is so complicated. Is that what the city of Chattanooga used to do, and you're kind of gaining confidence in being able to do that yourself, or is that kind of what's going on?
So where it stands right now, Chattanooga the drone industry is, I'd say within the last 10 years, the drone industry is just starting to crack open. And I'm actually going to tie a question that just came in here from Eric about that. And I think it's mostly, he's asking if to talk about the requirements for operating a drone and how the city was able to convince him to operate the drone program. That's almost exactly what happened. So as of right now, like I said, we've been hiring riggers to do a lot of the type of difficult work where you have to get out, or we've just been sending out inspectors. And honestly, people have been getting hurt, and it's gotten to the point to where it's like, why are we doing this and just risking more people? And like I said, I came along to this into the city about 3 years ago, and obviously we know that the drone technology has started increasing. It's starting to get into more forefront to where things are being easier, and it's starting to get to the point to where more people can operate them and they're a little bit more safer. And it just so happened to be the right time. And I came in with the right certifications and, the knowledge to combine these skills to say, hey, this is something that we can actually do. I'm obviously a young guy. I play video games. I know how to operate this stuff. So let me show you what we can do with it. And it really it happened to be a wonderful coincidence, just a combination of the skills that I had and the stuff that I was able to put before them. And ironically, the site that the project that I mentioned, where I had to do the volumetric survey for the tree damage, they had a contractor or a firm go out there, and they were going to fly the drone out there, and they just so happened to have crashed theirs out there. So it got to the point to where the contract fell through, and there was like, we really need this data. It's a FEMA project. We need to get it off right here. And it was just like, hey, we've got this drone, or we can do this. And it just really just kind of took off from right there. So in regards to the licensing and being able to get the city to the point there, if it's something that you're starting, unfortunately, it's one of those things that it might have to come out of your personal pocket just to show them that it's worth doing. And once you show them that it's something that's worth doing, just like, hey, this is the data that we're doing. And I'll give another quick story about how I was able to convince them and give them a time breakdown. They had us go out there to do another volumetric survey because the city's got plenty of dirt that they've always got to dump somewhere. And I used to work on the surveying team. So I went out there and I was the chain man. So I'm sitting there holding this chain out there. We went out there for 2 weeks straight, getting this huge mound of dirt, just surveyed out the whole thing. And then it got to the point where I was like, you know what, this is crazy. And that's what really convinced me to buy the drone for myself. I was like, okay, I need to prove to myself that this can be done the exact same way in so much less time. And I did it. I went and bought the drone myself. Actually, I wasn't certified then. And I'll speak onto that here in a little bit more. But I went and got the drone out there, figured out how to program it, learned how to fly it out at that site just because it was a free open park. And it blew my mind. I was able to get the same data in 2 hours That's from flying it to actually processing it. And I was like, okay, this is insane. Like, this is the same exact data. My accuracy is no less than 0.3 centimeters. Like, this is, what are we doing here? And that was one of the biggest things that convinced them to say, okay, maybe we need to start looking at this a little bit more differently. So if you want to find a specific case that you think is like it blows them out of the water, that's one of the things I would highly recommend to get the program going. And in regards to the operations and the licensing and everything like that, it one thing that we ran into was the initial planning, and it's usually the certification that people always get a little bit nervous over, because it's like, who's going to pay for it, who's going to train for it. But what it came down for me is that once I got the know-how and I figured out how to do everything, ironically, once we went to do it with the city, we didn't need the certification for it because we're operating under a government entity. But they highly recommend that somebody has the knowledge and the know-how and has gone through the process so that they know what these rules are. And I highly recommend it because the stuff that they tell you in this commercial certification class is almost priceless. It seems like information that will be unnecessary. Like they basically take an actual pilot's license test and they strip it down and they present it for you so that it's something a little bit more easily digestible, almost like a driver's license test or a permit or something like that. But for the most part, if you can study and pass a permit, you can get your drone license certification. And then that gives you the ability to do commercial operations, work for government entities or something like that, to the point you would have to employ it. But it mostly just gave me the experience of an experienced it gave me the ability to become an experienced pilot with getting that certification, because it teaches you the rules of the air, basically. Know where you can fly, gives you a little bit more of a sense of what's even possible. I hope that answered that question.
Hey, Jeremy, cool stuff. Enjoyed that. My question is about point cloud data. Can you tell me a little bit about how it was to work with that and any tips on that?
Ooh, that's a great question. I know I've said that a few times, but that one actually stressed me out. And once I figured it out, it blew my mind. And like I said, with the interior shots, the more pictures, the better, because these point clouds, the more you can pack into something like that for a model, especially if it's a detailed thing like a bridge or a building like that that's crumbling apart, you want as much data as you can. So say, for instance, like I said, when I did my original flight, I flew it around this height, and I took the other one, flew it around a little bit more. And the top one, I flew it even higher and tighter. And then I went around the bottom of the building with my camera and just took individual shots on the outside just to create that dense point cloud. But once the data actually was able to convert and become viewable in the computer, it was a lot more easy. It showed me what I didn't have and what I needed. So I actually did go back additionally because I noticed that the porch wasn't coming up like I wanted to. And I went and took additional shots. And that's actually how I found that last software I showed you, the Cloud Compare, because that one allows you to manipulate everything and to move things around, add data to create mesh layers and everything like that. So I'd say that working with the point cloud data, it seems a lot more daunting than it is, but when it comes down to it, it's just data. It becomes fun, really. It becomes the most exciting part of GIS, I feel like, because normally we're just looking at flat two-dimensional data, and it's like, okay, this is a line to here. I can show everybody that, but when you can take somebody around a building or even throw a set of VR goggles on them and look at that point cloud, we're opening people up to a whole new world and experience.
Yep, good stuff.
So, Jeremy, are you saying that VR goggles are part of the City of Chattanooga's equipment now?
Not part of the Chattanooga, but Hamilton County and the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department, they use those a lot. They do a lot with a lot of the stuff that I do with like conveyances and buildings and things like that. They do it with crime scenes. So for instance, I went out for a training with them once we were getting our program first started, and it wasn't an actual accident, but they had put two cars up near a tree, like they had just crashed into it. And they took two of their little smaller drones, just flew it around the area and just pretty much recreated the whole scene, like right there. And they took all the data on the scene, put it in their computer, processed it, I was like, wow, this is okay. This is worth it.
Tom, did
That's
you want to ask
awesome.
about the thermal camera?
Oh, the thermal camera. Yes, that's our next big initiative that we're gonna try to from the training that I've gone through, the possibilities with thermal camera, you can take that same 3D imagery. Let's see. I'll go ahead and share my screen here again really quick. You can take this same imagery here and say, for instance, if there is if you're doing a thermal inspection for a HVAC or something like that, and you're trying to determine where in your house that there might be a heat leak, or say, for instance, this is an actual project that we're doing in the city right now with one of our buildings. We realize that there's some type of leak coming through the roof. So say, for instance, here, if there's a leak coming in through here, we'd be able to look at that and see which parts are warmer or which parts are colder to determine, where there's an actual crack or where there's some type of emissions pouring through. And it's a part of this initiative that we want to use to specifically monitor the industrial site over at the wastewater treatment plant, because we want to make sure that there's no heat loss, because obviously heat loss for big equipment like that is inefficiency, and that's where we're trying to reduce.
So I guess another question I had, this is Tom, is I've done thermal imaging looking for sanitary sewer leaks, where you go out in the winter and you take pictures of the ground, you can see if the line's leaking. Are y'all thinking of doing stuff like that? Is that also part of it?
That's correct. That's the one that I was saying. It's the hardest one for me to think about right now, because I'm just imagining, I haven't been out to the site. They showed me a few pictures, but I'm just imagining how easy it's going to be able to see warm water or cold water or something coming through all that trash. It's something that I think is going to be very exciting to see what the data yields. But yeah, it's right along those lines, Tom.
I mean, the project we did, it was super easy. It was amazing how easy it was to see. And I couldn't really even believe it was, it looked like ghosts on a black background. So, I mean, it was very obvious. So, but I guess as far as thermal cameras, I don't really know a lot about them. Is there some sort of specs you have to have? Like, is it certain ranges of thermal it's looking for? Or I guess I wonder how you'd even pick out a thermal camera to get started. Were you involved in that, or do you know?
Yes, they actually threw me at the wall for all that stuff.
Okay.
But in regards to the thermal cameras, there's a few that I would recommend. Most of them are by the Zenmuse and the DJI line. Like, obviously, it's like they're the iPhones of the game. It's kind of hard to beat them unless you're going into a full custom unit and you're designing and engineering everything. But in regards to the ranges for the 3D cameras, that really depends on the quality of what you're going to be looking for. So if it's something that you need a very high quality detailed model, the standard cameras that DJI are releasing right now will work for those. Like the one that we've got coming in the mail right now is I think it's called the X. No, it's not the X. It's the H20T, and it's the dual thermal, the RGB and the thermal camera, so that you can use those same images, stitch them on top of each other, switch them back and forth, and catch them both in real time.
So what's the range of the price for something like that?
Those thermal cameras are about, the last time we looked, it was between $8,000 and $12,000.
Okay, well,
Mm-hmm.
it's a real investment. Hopefully, it's waterproof. Right.
Oh yeah, it's I don't know. That's what I'm saying. This whole project's been a huge blessing. Like the drone I bought was about $1,000, the personal one, and this one that we got pretty much cost just as much as the camera itself. And it's like, okay, this is a big deal. We got to be ready for this one here.
So I know one issue we had is that because the thermal cameras are so sensitive, is that like even interference from like a nearby machine or something could kind of fog it out? Did you have to worry about that with the drone, or does it not really create that much heat?
It's one of those things that it will create that much of an issue, but that's why I'm going at it with the perspective of a photogrammetrist again, kind of like I did with the house. And if I can think and make sure that I'm thinking in my head and planning during the flight, that there's a possibility that there can be some type of reflectivity coming off of another source, that I can pay attention to that when I'm doing my flight or prep for that, and think about that when I'm actually doing my analysis.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's great. I've been just kind of pondering in my mind about thermal cameras on drones, and I didn't realize that people had gone this far along and developed special cameras. That's really neat.
Now, something, Tom, that you'd be interested is that a lot of that we're talking right now, and probably the stuff that you were thinking was theoretical, they've started applying with machine learning. So a lot of that stuff to where they're saying, okay, this is a reflective range. This isn't enough to where we want it to register on our actual model. It'll take that out completely.
Oh, cool. Well, neat.
Mhm.
Well, that's great. Yeah, thanks so much.
Mhm.
Does anybody else have a question? Mr. Chan? I can ask one more if nobody else has one. Okay. Well, so we actually, so I'm in Memphis, and we did a erosion control demo day where we had folks set up like like those mats and things they use to keep dirt from washing off construction sites.
Mhm.
And apparently Chattanooga had done one a little bit earlier, like maybe where they had a facility, I guess, had a bunch of banks, and they put a bunch of geotextile mats on it. And they had some really good images, and they might even had an aerial video from that. I just wondered, were you involved in that, or is that before your time? I think it was 2019, but it may have been somebody else.
Yeah, that was before my time, at least. If anything, that might have been something they contracted out. And
Okay.
it might have been one of those projects that I started convincing them. I was like, hey, this was a little bit not too budget friendly.
Yeah, because I thought it looked really good.
Mhm. I've been pushing for this project for almost about 2 years, I'd say, and it's finally starting to come together. So, like any government work, it's a grind and it's a slog.
Okay, yeah, I know how it is, but then it finally happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, cool. Anybody else have any questions while we have Jeremy on the line? Give people a chance to turn off their mutes. Hopefully no one's speaking on their mute.
I'll go ahead and throw my email address down in the chat in case anybody wants to reach out with me for another question or a follow-up.
Sure,
Always
that'd be great
available
if
to
they-
talk about anything, especially
Yeah.
music, entertainment, drones, GIS, all that kind of stuff. That's what all the hats I'm wearing now.
Well, maybe we'll have the Jeremy variety show one time.
You just have to come to Chattanooga and see that. There's a few of them rolling.
A few of them rolling around there.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Well, great. Well, I guess we'll let you go unless anybody else has any questions. Rob's come off mute. Do you have anything to say, Rob, or just saying?
I was just gonna say it was an awesome presentation, and Jeremy, we'd love to have you maybe come over to Memphis in about a year for our next conference and show us what you've been working on in 22.
That'll be wonderful. By that time, we should be. Maybe we'll even have a LiDAR unit connected on by that time.
Wow, cool. Yeah, that'd be neat. Yeah, just let us know.
Well,
It'd be great.
Well, we'll reach out next summer and see how you're doing.
All right, that sounds good. I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope the rest of you all have a great day.
You too. Thank everybody for attending.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jeremy.
All right.
Goodbye.
All right. Y'all have a great day.